Hey there, my name is Alex. I am the Silver Mont, and this is my review of Resident Evil 4's Remake, played on PC via Steam. I received a key for this product from Games Planet, where you can pick Resident Evil 4 up and get 5% off with the code LEON for a limited time. There's an affiliate link in the description below if you want to check it out. So following the pretty good RE2 remake and the pretty disappointing RE3 remake, and no Code Veronica remake, we have Resident Evil 4, which is actually the first of these remakes where I haven't just played the original, but am rather familiar with it, albeit not as much as 5 and 6. So, first things first, if you try and play this remake exactly the way you play the original, that won't work. You need to relearn your muscle memory to some extent. As well as a huge visual overhaul, RE4R also updates much of the gameplay. Many of the same aspects are technically there, but they've all been shifted about in various ways. For example, all of the original pistols are present, but their stats have been adjusted somewhat. Limb-based melee returns, which the original RE4 used, head stun and leg stun, and yes, you can suplex from the very start. The attaché case is back, certain enemies can be insta-killed with flash grenades, and so on and so forth. The differences came down to more nuanced things. In the original, it's possible to walk past a lot of enemy attacks with the right timing, as these attacks are by and large locked in one direction. Once they start swinging, they aren't really going to pivot mid-attack. However, enemies are a lot more mobile now, as well as somewhat more aggressive. Whilst I've not done a direct comparison, perhaps a little tankier too. In fact, the biggest change when it comes to gameplay, in my opinion, is that it's quite a lot harder than the original game. But who knows how much of that is me having become decent at the original and needing to learn everything from scratch to some extent with this one. I think the fact that Leon can move and shoot forced them to make enemies more mobile as well, which makes sense. See, in the original, not being able to move and shoot didn't necessarily make the game harder because the whole game was designed around that fact. Everything was designed around the game's mobility. Granted, being able to move and shoot isn't that great at times, depending on what you're using, considering they retain the aiming system from RE2R, wherein you need to steady your aim for the reticle to shrink and increase your stagger and crit damage. Yes, by default there is no laser sight, like in RE4. However, there's an upgrade you can get fairly early on to apply a laser sight to either the starting pistol or the Punisher, and I would 100% suggest it, because it makes a huge difference. In fact, it's enough of a difference to make me feel like the Punisher is now the best pistol. Sorry, Black Kite. Not sorry, Red Knight. In addition to this, enemies are more dangerous because you can not only move while shooting, but the knife has been upgraded and downgraded. On the upside, the knife can now be used for stealth kills, breaking out of grabs and parries. You can parry most non-grab attacks in the game. This includes parrying projectiles to deflect them. On the downside, the knife can break now. It can be repaired at the merchant, and you can carry extra knives you find too. You can also upgrade your main knife's durability, which is honestly the first thing I did. Making the knife such a big part of the gameplay is interesting. Of course, in the original it was a great way to save ammo, along with melee attacks, but now you need to plan it out a little more. I'm still not 100% sure how I feel about that, as I like the parrying and the extra uses that the knife has. The durability wasn't too debilitating in the game, only at the beginning. But well, maybe I got a little ahead of myself. What is Resident Evil 4? A third-person shooter in the genre of action horror. This isn't really a scary game, although there's some tension-building moments. The horror comes from the setting, the enemies, and so on. You're fighting horrific enemies. There are horror themes, but it's not really a horror game. Resident Evil has always sat in this genre for the most part. So if you're going into this game expecting a very spooky game full of jump scares and things like that, it's probably not for you. It's action, mostly. The player takes the role of Leon Kennedy, tasked with rescuing the president's daughter, kidnapped by a strange cult in a remote region of Spain. Things quickly spiral out of control and escalate. This is a very interesting remake in that it overhauls visuals and gameplay whilst trying to channel the spirit of the original. There are times it succeeds and times it fails. Overall though, it's a very good game in my opinion. The graphics are great, and I had no problems with the art style. It did a great job at capturing the spirit of the original, in my opinion. For the most part, character designs are very faithful. Others have been overhauled. Ada, for example, no longer goes on a covert operation and grapple hooks around in what I can only describe as a cheap owl. Some people might be annoyed at the change in her outfit. Honestly, I think the new one makes more sense. And I don't think it's a censorship issue either. I mean, look at it. Most of the enemies and characters are faithfully recreated, and it's interesting seeing how some of the more bizarre enemies, such as the Regenerator, whatever, look in very high detail. The game's on the RE engine, and it ran pretty well. It scaled nicely to my machine, and I had no stuttering. Thank God. There were a few scenes which tanked my frame rate, dropping down to 45s and so. Usually anything with lots of fire at night, with torches and rain. Thankfully, this only happened in about 3 scenes in the game. And for the most part I was able to maintain 60 FPS, I'd say like 90% of the time. And I expect it's fine on more modern machines. My PC was good in 2017. It's getting a bit outdated now, but for the most part I was happy with the game's performance, and it looks great. Several gameplay segments are improved upon from the original. Boss battles being one of the big ones. Krauser's fight in particular was a marked improvement. The original had a lot of QuickTime event segments, an extended cutscene basically wherein you didn't hit the buttons at the right time, you would die. Never liked those, ever. I'm fine with watching a cutscene. I'm fine with pressing a button and then something awesome happening, but I hate those kind of cinematics where it's like you need to hit a button every few seconds or you get like a game over or whatever. So all of those being removed is a good move, in my opinion. How about where the original is better? Well, I haven't decided yet about the gameplay in general, but I'm slightly leaning toward the original, as the flow of everything was almost perfect in the original. Another aspect I'm not super keen on is how ammo works in the remake. It does, in a sense, a good job in making you feel like you're always about to run out of ammo, always on your last clip, magazine, whatever. Until we realise that once you get under a certain number of bullets, the game will more or less spawn some right in front of you. This artificial scarcity started to become very obvious about halfway through the game, and I kinda preferred the original's way of letting you build a small personal armada of weapons. But I can see the logic behind this new approach, at least, and it's not awful. The original also had the one-liners, the campy tone, and, in a lot of cases, better performances or just like better voices in my opinion. There's nothing wrong with the voice acting in the new game, apart from Ada, who for some reason seems to have been recast from the RE2 remake. The new voice actor is, well, it's not a good performance. Either way, I think the original cast just had more charm, especially Ada and Sadler, who I think are the biggest culprits here. Helped hugely, of course, by the really silly script. Annoyingly, a lot of those infamous lines are cut, but referenced in achievements. No more, your right hand comes off, no thanks bro, you're small time, and so on. A few lines make it in though, like, game time, hey, it's that dog, etc. Honestly, huge part of the appeal of RE4 for me were the campy tone, and that is toned down a lot. Thankfully it's still present, just to a much lesser extent. It is a little jarring at the beginning of the game, seeing this horribly burnt, realistic corpse of a policeman, and then having Leon quip about bingo. Just a framing issue there though. And of course, even if this remake was absolutely horrible and butchered everything about the original, I still wouldn't mind too much, because the original has a PC port with a really good high-definition overhaul mod that took a small team years to polish up. I was following their progress for a long time. I was actually waiting to play it again on PC until they finished. And then the remake was announced, so I was like, I'll just play that now. But we're not losing out. That's my point. The original is still there, still accessible on platforms. Just have to hope Capcom don't decide to delist it or anything. Fortunately though, RE4R is pretty good. That said, I think RE4 original holds up really well. So much so that it didn't really need a remake. But that's just me. I certainly enjoyed the remake. As of time of writing, Mercenaries isn't in the game, but it's supposedly coming with a free update in like a week or two from now. As someone who put hundreds of hours into RE5's mercs, I'm hoping this one gets co-op, but I'm not going to hold my breath as the original didn't, and I can't really blame them if they don't put online multiplayer in mercs, although I would love to see it. Ada's mini campaigns, what are they called? Assignment Ada in separate ways, I think. Those aren't present either. I'm not sure what the plan is for them. If they're included later, free of charge, great. But I'm kind of expecting them to be paid DLC, which won't surprise me too much. Fortunately, the game we have right now is decent. It has almost everything from the original, some new areas or expanded areas, which don't mess with the flow all too much either. There are of course some cuts from the original game, but they aren't too egregious in my opinion. They are missing the, what is that one boss called? U3 or something? He's gone. Maybe he'll be in Ada's stuff, I don't know. I'll be honest though, the biggest thing I'm bummed about in terms of cut content is the laser corridor, because it was so silly. But that was all QuickTime events too. Still, we could have kept it as a cutscene, right? They did keep the throne at least, so no time to rest. At any rate, RE4R is good. I can suggest it if you're a fan of the original, or if you haven't played the original and just want a solid third-person shooter. Took me about 15-16 hours to beat on my first playthrough. Of course, you can trim that down a lot. There's also New Game Plus and other things to incentivize extra playthroughs too. Mercenaries is on the way. Mercenaries is a sort of score attack mode. You have like 5 or 6 minutes and you just need to fight a bunch of enemies. It gets weirdly addictive. But if at the moment this is too steep of a price to length ratio, then, well, pick up the original, which is probably a lot cheaper, and grab this one on a sale maybe. Either way, if it piqued your curiosity, check out the link to it in the description, and I hope this review was useful or entertaining, and I'll catch you next time. Hasta luego.